Circulatory system. The circulatory system brings nutrients, things like glucose and amino acids, and it brings oxygen to your body cells. So in other words, it feeds your body cells, and then it takes away waste. Waste are things like carbon dioxide, and then there's lots of nitrogenous waste. This is the stuff that will make up your urine. So for example, anytime you break down an amino acid or a nucleotide, there's nitrogen in that. And when you do cellular respiration, cellular respiration uses stuff like glucose. So you take an amino acid or a nucleic acid, and you get the nitrogen out, and then you have to pee that out of your body because it's a waste product, and then you just use the other stuff, the carbons and the oxygens. So parts of the circulatory system. There are three basic parts. There's the heart, and so this is the pump that pushes blood through all of the different blood vessels. And then there's the blood vessels themselves. So for blood vessels, we have arteries, veins, and then the tiny little ones are called capillaries. And then there's the blood. You see this in red and blue, and it's not really true. So if you look at your wrist, you can probably see blood vessels that are blue. And that's the tissue of the blood vessel. That's not actually the blood. Your blood is all either bright red if it has oxygen, or it's dark red if it doesn't have much oxygen in it. You've seen the bright red when you've scraped your knee and you've bled, because the oxygen, even if your blood was deoxygenated, as soon as it hits the air, it's going to get oxygen, so it'll be bright red. And if you've ever donated blood or had to have some blood taken at the doctor's with a phlebotomist, if you've been brave enough to look at the tube, they always go into a vein because they're low pressure. The vein that they choose is one that doesn't have oxygen. So you've probably seen the dark red blood if you've donated blood before, or if you've had to have blood taken. So we're going to look at each of these individually. So we're going to look at the heart first, then we'll look at blood vessels, then we'll look at blood. Here is what the heart tissue looks like. It's made out of muscle. The muscle is called cardiac muscle. So most of the heart is cardiac muscle tissue. There are three types of muscle tissue. There's the skeletal muscle that's in your, well, it moves your body around. It's usually attached to your skeleton, to your bones. So in your arm, for example. There's smooth muscle. You'll find that in your blood vessels, and you'll find it in your stomach and your intestines. And then there's cardiac muscle. So anytime you have the word cardiac, it goes with the heart. So for example, cardiac arrest is a heart attack. You've probably heard of CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. That's if someone has passed out and their heart has stopped. You can do the cardio part, which is pumping the blood. And when I was a kid, you'd do the pulmonary part, which means you'd blow into their mouth to get air into them, which I think is really not part of the protocol anymore. Okay, blood vessels. So there are three types that I want you to know. The first one is called veins. Veins bring low pressure blood to the heart. And so I think I have arrows that'll come in for me. So this blood vessel takes blood from the top of your body, your head, your shoulders. This blood vessel is taking blood from anything underneath your heart, so your trunk, your legs, and it's going up to this first chamber, which I'll show you in a little bit. This blood was already around your whole body. It's already gone into the teeny little parts, the littlest blood vessels, the capillaries, and now it's coming back. So it's only being forced back to your heart from the blood that's behind it, pushing it along. So that is low pressure blood, and that's true for all veins. An artery carries high pressure blood away from the heart. And so here's a really happy thing. Arteries start with A, and away starts with A. And so here's an arrow for that. So what happens inside the heart is that blood comes in here, and then there's a chamber between here and here, but it's forced through this way. And then it's being forced out of your heart. It's actually going to go to the lungs next. And so if it's going away, you can see this arrow is going away. So therefore, this one is an artery. And you'll notice that these are both the same color. There's actually dark red blood in both of those, which we'll talk about soon. But for now, what I want you to remember is artery away. The one other thing that's really important is that your heart pumps really hard. And when it pumps really hard, the blood is under a high pressure. So if you're forcing blood out of the heart, that's high pressure. So remember, arteries are away, and also they have high pressure blood. What would this one be? So this one's bringing blood to the heart. And so it's going to the heart. It's a vein. And this one is sending blood away from the heart. So away, that's an artery. The littlest blood vessels are called capillaries, and I was afraid I spelled it wrong, but it was right. So they allow for the exchange of gases, nutrients, and waste between the blood. So the blood is inside these little tiny blood vessels and the cells of the body. So let's take a look at this. Here's an artery, or it's actually a tiny little artery. It has a special name, but we'll call it an artery. And here's a vein. And so this came, let's see, this was bringing blood toward the heart. So artery is away from the heart. And so if it's going away from the heart, it's going to all your body cells. And so the blood's coming through here, and picture body cells all over the place. So this thing, there are body cells all around this. So the blood vessels are breaking into these teeny, teeny, teeny little tubes and bringing blood to your cells. So your cells don't get bathed in the blood. They get the stuff out of the blood. So nutrients come out, oxygen comes out, wastes go in, waste like carbon dioxide go in, nitrogenous waste go in, glucose comes out, amino acids come out, all the good stuff comes out, all the bad stuff goes back in. So here you have the vein bringing blood back to the heart, and that's going to have all the junk in it. And so we'll talk about how that junk gets cleaned out later. One other thing to notice is that this is a closed system. That means that the blood isn't actually touching all of the cells. The blood is in the tubes. It's just the good stuff that comes out and the bad stuff that comes in. The red blood cells, all that stuff, a lot of the proteins, all that stuff stays in the blood. So your whole cardiovascular system, here's your heart. Arteries go away from the heart. You break up into these little capillaries, but you never have a spot where blood is just kind of floating around. They're always inside these tubes. And the tubes will come back together like so, and they'll come back to the heart in the form of a vein. But it's not like these open-ended branches. They will always come back together like that. So they get littler, but they come back together to make a big tube, and they're a closed system. And the videos never work, so I'll do that in class. Quiz time. Which blood vessel allows for the exchange of gases, nutrients, and waste between the blood and the body cells? Between the body cells and the blood. So pause this and think of it, and I'm going to give you the answer right now. So the exchange would be those tiny little ones, which are capillaries. Which blood vessel brings blood toward the heart? Well, that's not an A, so that must be veins. Which blood vessel brings blood away from the heart? And that's an A, so it must be arteries. One thing that students confuse all the time is they'll say that arteries have oxygenated blood and veins have deoxygenated blood, and that is almost true, but not quite. So I'll show you that on our next video. The way I want you to remember it is who brings blood away or toward the heart, and then who has high pressure or low pressure blood. So which blood vessel contains high pressure blood? If it's high pressure, that means the heart just forced it into that blood vessel. And so if the heart was just forcing it into that blood vessel, it's going away from the heart, away, that's arteries. Which blood pressure carries low pressure blood, but it's not a capillary is what I'm saying here, but does not allow for the exchange of anything with the body cells. So it's a big, thick one, but it has low pressure blood. Those are veins. So the idea here, capillaries are tiny, tiny, tiny. This wall is one thin, thin, thin cell layer thick. So if that's a capillary, stuff can go out, stuff can go in. It can diffuse through. That's a capillary. Your veins don't look like that. Your veins are thick. So that's a cross-section of a vein. It's got epithelial tissue, it's got muscle tissue, it's got connective tissue. It's thick enough that blood just goes through. Stuff doesn't really diffuse out or in like that. So the vein is just a tube to bring blood back to the heart. And I think I'm going to end here.